Do you like Twilight? Twilight at night.
Hello, and welcome back to Twilight at Night. I'm your host, Charlie Leeming, joined, as always, by my co-host,
Tom Collins. Hello.
Hello, and today's guest,
No.
Lucy Jones.
Lucy Jones. Thank you for joining us, Lucy.
It's great to be a host here with my other hosts.
You are a guest.
No.
Twilight at Night, of course, the number one fan podcast
Ever.
For Twilight.
for
About-
Twilight.
About anything.
About anything, yes, of course.
And also, number one
podcast.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Full stop.
Especially by Split Television.
Technically recorded at night because it is getting darker. I'll give us that.
It is
4 p.m.
4:06.
But it's winter.
Yeah. So,
All right, folks, today's topic is a sort of who would win situation.
okay. I always love these ones because the debates are always so intense.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, these episodes always go on so fun.
It's, dude, great podcast.
Thanks.
Look at us go.
Mm.
Us three hosts.
No, 2 hosts and sometimes a guest.
Thank you again for joining us today. The topic
You're in my house.
the topic is a battle between Edward Cullen and Jacob, last name
Black.
Black.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jacob Black. But here's the
most
twist.
formal name for Jack Black.
The twist is Jacob Black as a vampire versus Edward Cullen as a werewolf.
And
There's
just to clarify, not a werewolf, like a lichen, or are we talking about the wolf form of the Native American tribe
the
that
ability
Jacob belongs to, according to the books, the final book of Twilight.
According to the books, the ability of Jacob and his clan tribe.
Thank you.
Now, there are 2 rounds to this.
Yep.
The first round is they wake up with these abilities, and they are unaware of how to use them, so they have to sort of learn on the go, and they know they have to fight. And the second round is they have a year to prepare.
Okay.
So in the first round, how long do they have? Is it like day of?
They wake up, they go to the fight.
Ooh. So they got a 25-minute car journey.
Yeah.
And
Separate
Edward's
vehicles.
sticking his head out the vehicle the entire time.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm perfectly willing to stake my claim on who would win the initial fight, but the second one might take a bit more thought.
Let's
But
start with the first one then.
the initial fight, it goes to Jacob no matter what.
Vampire Jacob.
Yeah. We've seen from the vampire films and books, from the Twilight films and books, that vampire powers in this canon are essentially super strength, super speed, suck blood. And we also know that they
Super strength, super speed, and suck blood.
and while we do know that the wolves are quite good at fighting the humans, and it does depend on what sort of wolf form Edward takes. I imagine he would be the alpha, same as Jacob, but we can never really tell.
Mm-hmm.
Vampires, their powers seem quite easy to adapt to, and if anything, kind of hard to get used to that strength. You're stronger than you are, whereas it might be harder for Edward to figure out how to get into his wolf form, which for Jacob it takes rage
Second
at first.
nature, almost.
But now it's easy for him, whereas it might be quite difficult for Edward.
You said like a rage sort of thing. Is that like D&D rage, or is that the emotion for it?
I think it's emotional based for Jacob, last name.
I
Black.
think Edward's a really emotional person, and I think it would go quite well when you remove the layer of like sad vampire.
Well, I think it depends on what context the fight is under. If it's under just a strictly they are fighting,
Open
fight?
field.
but what I'm saying is if it's an open field fight with no...
Why are they fighting?
Exactly. If the claim is they're fighting to see who's stronger, I think Jacob will win no
To
matter
the
what.
death.
But if it's over Bella, then we're sort of breaching
It's Twilight.
into
It's always over Bella.
Now-
we're breaching into a different territory now where Edward could win the fight, you know.
Let me bring up a something to think about on this. Is that each of them were their previous forms beforehand, and going into that, Edward knows the weaknesses of vampires.
That's true. Which is to remove their heads.
Remove the head.
And then squish it.
Werewolves in this don't have any
Weakness to silver.
any apparent like huge weakness that the vampire has.
No.
Jacob doesn't have as much knowledge on how to fight the wolf.
But
Edward.
We do know that Jacob does fight other wolves in his pack in order to become the alpha and stay the alpha, but that is in his wolf form, so it might be harder for him as a human to adapt to that.
Yeah, and we also have seen that these wolf battles are usually like pretty close due to the fact that they have no like outlying weaknesses. It's just a matter of strength.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the other thing with that is how quickly did Bella take to being a vampire?
Instant.
Well, then I think that really shows how...
She had a deer.
She did quickly eat a deer.
Well, actually, to be fair to the context of the situation, we don't know how long it took for Bella to get used to being a vampire, because we see her get turned into a vampire when Edward sucks the blood out of her vagina. But that's real.
Of course, we all know this. We're #1 Twilight fans.
Of course, we all know this.
That was not a shocked silence. That was all nodding in approval.
Yeah. Not approval. Agreement with it being fact.
But some might argue that it was a C-section, so it might have been more of a stomach area, but in the movies it looks like he's reaching for the vag. Anyways,
it's a point of contention in the fan base.
I mean, we've already done an episode on this. Did he eat pussy or did he eat tummy?
Yeah. Good episode. Check it out.
We definitely decided on eating pussy.
Yeah. Episode 18.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, I also remember this as I was also there.
Oh, yeah, you were a guest on that one as well.
No,
yes.
I was one of the hosts of that one.
No, you were definitely one of the guests.
Name an episode you've done without me.
Episode 23.
Hasn't happened yet. We're recording episode 21.
Not true.
We record episodes out of order.
Also, we're on episode 213.
We're a no but sort of improv podcast.
You guys are so mean to me. Can I also say, the second we started recording, we were all chilling and slouching. Tom and Charlie both sit up, put their elbows on the table, and lock their hands together.
It's
Twilight at night time.
It's serious business. I would also just like to say, to get back to the topic at hand.
Still at round 1.
We don't know how long it took Bella to adapt to her vampire form. I kind of made an assumption there that it was a day, but it could genuinely have been months, for all we know.
True.
I know Edward did struggle for a while, but that was mainly with an issue of eating human blood that he struggled with. I think the same could be said potentially for Bella, but I imagine Jacob won't have to worry about this on the day.
Right. Now, in human form, the wolf attacked is typically just like a normal guy.
Well, they're stronger than regular.
And
they're very warm.
As
we know from the line from, I believe it's Eclipse, when Jacob says, "I am hotter than you," to Edward because of his radiating body heat.
His body heat. I think that gaining any sort of injury on this is going to sort of pull out the wolf in him. It's a wolf thing.
It is a wolf thing.
One would say.
True.
So, like, I think in round 1, the moment the wolf comes out, Edward Wolf, he knows still go for the head. He still has his memories in wolf form, just a bit more bestial.
God, the Twilight Wiki's so long for just Bella. I'm so far into it. It doesn't end.
I've got the wiki memorized.
Me too. I wrote the wiki.
Name one thing it says.
Bella.
Yeah. Twilight. I think it's also worth noting
But my point was, just before you hop in here, that the moment Edward Wolf goes into wolf form, he's going for the head and ripping and tearing.
But here's my point: is Vampire Jacob is very well aware that vampires' weakness is their head, because that's what he goes for as a wolf. Like it's they're vampire hunters. You know, that's what they do. They kill vampires in the area. So you could argue that Jacob would be aware of this head weakness and try and do everything in his power to prevent it, perhaps spiking Edward's fat skull into the ground.
Yeah.
Edward and Jacob, did they fight before as their true selves?
They've had scuffles
in the series.
Scuffles, but yes.
Yeah,
scuffles, but
nothing to death.
More just sort of intense testosterone-filled stare-offs.
Yeah, mainly due to Bella kissing Jacob and then leaving him cocked and ready to go. Big issue. I mean, we've talked about this in episode 1, which was our first episode we did. Was Bella the true villain of Twilight?
Which we came to the conclusion, yes.
Yes, because she's the reason that Jacob is horny.
I'm really glad you guys decided with that, then instead of it being me, which was a track you guys were going down for a while.
That took about half an hour to get off.
We did waste a bit of time on that when we could have been talking about the fact that Bella did kiss Jacob and then say to Jacob that she hates him numerous times. And then Jacob was a horny wolf. Of course he's going to want to fight a vampire over
and she
her.
ruined his bike. But let's not get back to episode
And we
1.
don't want to talk about the fact that he fucked her daughter.
No, not again.
Not again.
No.
That was 3 hours.
Those are 3 part series.
That was Twilight at Night, the mini-series.
Twilight at night, then
Baby.
day, then night
Jacob
again.
fucked a child, and you guys were okay with it.
Stephanie Myers.
Yep.
We tweeted it at her.
Yeah, but we do respect you a lot, Stephanie Myers, which is why we do this show.
Thank you
'cause
for
it is
your-
our favorite show.
This
favorite
is
book.
of course the segment
and
of
movie.
Twilight at Night where we thank Stephanie Myers.
Thank you, Stephanie Myers.
Thank you, Stephanie
you, Stephanie
Myers.
Myers.
Thank you for everything you've done.
We appreciate it so much.
So round 1.
I think it goes to Jacob. I think he wouldn't be able to necessarily hold back, and I think he would just rip Edward in half.
I think Jacob, not having the combat experience protecting his weaknesses, might go into it a little bit too hard.
Haphazardly, maybe.
Hazardly.
But I think the other thing is something that Edward learned how to do was like control his urges to not fucking kill people. That's the number one thing he hasn't learned how to do yet. Control himself and not killing people.
Yeah. And I also think that, and this is something I think Lucy would agree with, when Jacob punched a guy in the first Twilight movie, it was pretty violent.
Now, to play Bella's advocate here, I think a wolf enraged Edward is something that a vampire would be hard pressed to fight against, even knowing his own weakness and defending against it.
I mean, let's make a brief discussion here on what kind of wolf is Edward and what kind of vampire is Jacob. Are we assuming that they're the exact same as they were?
I think they exchange power levels.
Okay, so
Even exchange bodies.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, well,
and
I
you can
think
look
Edward-
on our website about our power level and
Sure.
tier list.
yeah, and if you want, you can buy our copy of Twilight Night, Twilight Top Trumps.
Yeah,
I mean, Edward's significantly stronger than Jacob in canon.
right.
And so I think giving Jacob Edward's powers, and Edward is,
Yes.
you know, while I do think that Edward would probably take a more tactile approach and a more intelligent approach, I think Jacob's sheer raw power, because we do know he's a power type.
Yeah.
Power type.
Yeah. Read the compendium.
Yeah. Whereas Edward's more of a sort of balanced type, which is good for vampires, but not necessarily as good for a wolf.
That should be our Twilight Night merch. Read the compendium.
I think I'd be comfortable conceding the round 1 to Jacob.
Yeah,
I
agree.
agree, yeah.
Good. Sweet. Round 2, a year to prepare.
Let's start with the questions we've got about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they get to team up with people?
Good question. In this situation, I'm going to say it's a 1v1.
Okay.
But
I
they do
think-
get to use other people's knowledge and resources, just not team up.
I think everyone's circled around them watching
Yeah.
this fight. So I think a really important bit to take into account is who can cheer the loudest? Who's going to have the moral support in the moment?
Audience interaction.
Yeah.
I would also like to put forward, and this could really change the fight majorly, what would be the dynamic of, would Edward go and join the tribe, or would they stay with their respective crews?
That is an important note that goes back to the cheering. Who are the wolves and vampires cheering for? Their previous companions or their new blood?
Because we're keeping in mind now that... You do that because it was
a little Twilight joke there. We like to have fun.
None of the books are called New Blood.
Blood, though, is like a Twilight.
Oh, it's one of them blood jokes. Oh, very good. I love me a blood joke. Sorry, that was my Dracula impression.
So I guess, I mean, let's make the establishment now. Edward would become the new alpha of the wolf pack. Which
Absolutely.
would drive them to him.
But
Also, I feel like the vampires, they treat Edward as family above all else, so it might mean that Edward gets both sides with him, whereas Jacob is left alone.
But
that's something I hadn't considered.
Is it not a betrayal that Edward has pulled, whether on purpose or accidental?
Well,
I think so.
Yeah, I would say that the
Maybe
vampires...
not everybody in Edward's family would side with him, but I think some of them would. Bella
Obviously,
would.
for sure, his older brother would not, and his older sister might not. But
you have to consider the wolf stink as well.
But that's true. The wolf stink is pretty bad for vampires, but they did learn to love Jacob, and I feel like... I mean, what time is this taking place? Is this after Twilight, or
after the events of Twilight? So they would have learned to love the wolf stink.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say it. I mean, it really does depend on whether or not Edward would get to be the alpha of the pack.
Yeah.
Because if he did, then he has an
I
esteemed
think-
advantage.
I think we can all pretty much agree that Edward would become the alpha of the pack.
I think because even though Jacob won that first battle, that was I don't know. I don't think there was a wolf that would win that battle. It was
Wasn't a wolf thing.
Wasn't a wolf
Wasn't
thing.
a wolf thing.
So yes, audience interaction part of this battle goes to Edward.
Yeah, and I would also say, I mean, prior to the battle, he's got time to train both with vampires and with wolves. He's got sort of the double side experience. He can talk about weaknesses with the wolf pack, and he can talk about strengths with the vamp pack.
And he can almost sort of plan each of the attacks against Jacob Vampire and his weaknesses, whereas Jacob Vampire pretty much has to take that year to get used to his new vampire powers almost alone.
I think he would have the older siblings.
I agree. I think he would have the older
Of the Cullen
siblings.
family.
I think he would
Took me
also...
a very long time to remember their last names.
He might potentially... I mean, it's tough for me to say, but he would probably have Renesmee on his side.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bella and Edward's daughter because of the imprint.
Yeah. They is fucking.
Unfortunately. And I guess the second question there becomes: would Jacob rather team up with the vampire council in Italy, and would he?
Ooh.
Because you know that would.
They're more of a purist vampire sort of thing. They would be uncomfortable with teaming with Wolf Edward.
Yeah, and so I think they might.
Wolf would.
They
Wolf
might
would.
take Jacob's side, and they've always
Wolf.
disliked Edward, as we know from the films and the books.
Yeah.
So I think it is important to state that maybe they would help Jacob out, and they are very powerful vampires, much more powerful than.
But without being able to participate in the battle themselves, how much help can they offer?
Training. That's all I'm
The
thinking.
moral support, the team dynamic.
And they've
I
been,
don't know if that'd be great moral support, but training, yeah.
they've been fighting a lot of wolves their whole life, really. So I think they've kind of got a bit of experience with taking down wolves. I mean, we saw in the final battle, the wolves were a cakewalk for the vampire council, but the vampires themselves were quite strong. I mean, we know vampires are stronger than wolves. It requires a pack for it to really be fair, unless it's an alpha versus a vampire.
I think, in all honesty, though, second round, I'm giving it to Ed Wolf.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the training with the wolves and the vampires would help an outstanding amount.
Yeah.
I think his moral support would be greater, and also
And a year's a long time.
Mastery of the wolf form.
Yeah.
Audience interaction.
I also think the other thing is, I mean, we know Edward is an intelligence type fighter, whereas I think Jacob's power type fighting style wouldn't necessarily help him as much here.
It doesn't translate.
Yeah, with that
well.
1 year training, he wouldn't necessarily train as effectively as Edward would, who would be.
Because I think everyone he'd be training from aren't like intelligence-based fighters either. I think they kind of go for the brute strength as well. So I don't think it would help him enough to overthrow the Ed Wolf.
Wouldn't give him enough advantage over the disgusting amount of advantages that Ed Wolf has.
I guess if we were to take it from a different angle, it would be what if the wolf pack stayed with Jacob, in which case I think then it would still probably go to Ed Wolf, but it would at least be closer.
Yeah.
Because I think that the getting to train with wolves would be good, but it wouldn't necessarily be as beneficial to, as we've said. I mean, wolves don't have a direct weakness the same way vampires do, where taking off the head, they are gone.
All right. So I think we can conclude today's episode as round 1, immediately wake up in the new forms. That goes to Jacob, and round 2 goes to Ed Wolf after a year of preparation. Are we happy with that?
Yeah, but we need a tie break. Let's say neither of them had ever met Bella before.
Ooh.
Who would end up with Bella?
Robert Pattinson's more attractive than Taylor Lautner.
Are they swapping bodies?
No.
They are not swapping bodies.
Okay.
But
he has the vampire advantage.
And
A trait which is on page 72 of the compendium.
yeah, and also in the
What page?
compendium
72.
and also in the compendium page, I think it's 104 paragraph 3, we do get a little passage about how Bella feels about the werewolves, and she does think that they stink a little bit. Not too much. She thinks that it's kind of a nice scent sometimes, but when they go wolf form, it can be quite stinky. And when
I think, she was able to find herself attracted to Jacob despite the wolf stink, so that he was attractive enough to be a possible rival.
mate.
And
When
then
he wasn't even a werewolf.
yeah, and then Jacob now has the vampire advantage as well.
I think this one goes to Jacob.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, because I do think again, like I said, Rob Pattinson's far more handsome. But I think, I mean, as well as that, Jacob probably wouldn't be as abusive as he is in the films. He wouldn't be as much of a cunt without the wolf thing, because as we know, getting your wolf powers makes you angrier, makes you a bit more aggressive, which Edward with some extra aggression might
be a bit much.
Might dissuade Bella from him. Yeah, and also he couldn't say "hold on, Spider Monkey," which, as said in the compendium, was the clincher for Bella.
Yeah.
You know,
the deciding moment.
Yeah,
almost.
that was when she went, "I'm in love with Edward."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird because during the books, I mean, we've said this in episode 3, 4, and 36. There's never been a point where Bella has actually been attracted to Jacob outside of trying to make Edward jealous. So it's interesting. Maybe it's the vampirism that would make them make her.
It
That's
would
kind
sort
of what
bridge
she's
the
horny for.
difficulty that she's trying to find with this. And almost a final question on this. Vampire Jacob loses his shirt more or less?
More. Significantly more, because we know, not to steamroll this question, but we know that the reason Jacob stops wearing his shirt as much was because he's so hot in the wolf form.
Yeah.
So far less. And also he doesn't
so you
want to
just
ripple.
changed your answer.
Far more. I mean, more shirt off, less shirt. No shirt left.
Right.
Edward actually doesn't remove the shirt at all in the movies because Robert Pattinson didn't want to work out for them. That's true. Except in the ones where he has sex. But even then, they obscure his stomach.
So
I feel like your point was he wouldn't take his shirt off as much.
No, he would. He would take it off more.
Jacob, when he's a vampire.
Wasn't the question, would Edward take his shirt off more?
It
Oh,
was
he would take it off less.
Yeah, the other thing is he would be sparkly.
yeah,
And he would be wearing a lot more flannel because we know that Jacob loves flannel.
he loves his flannel.
He loves flannel.
But he stopped wearing flannel because it was too hot.
So the
God, it'd be so
Oh, and
great
he'd
to
still
go through
have
flannel again.
he would still have his long hair.
tiebreak round goes to Jacob.
Yeah.
Jacob, yeah.
Oh, the long hair might change it though, because he looked really dumb.
Would he cut it as a vampire?
No, because he cuts it because it's too hot as a wolf.
Right.
So maybe that changes things actually.
Oh, that's something we hadn't taken into account. Long hair.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if it's enough to swing it.
I think the Vampire Council would probably talk.
Yeah. They wouldn't be happy
someone
with
someone would pull him aside and be like, "Hey, Jake, buddy,
cut your hair.
time to cut your fucking hair."
We're all sexy.
I don't think they would like, hey, you've got to cut your hair. They would do it.
Yeah, they have an image to upkeep.
Yeah. With that especially, Jacob hands down.
Yeah, it goes to Jacob, I think.
So I'd like to congratulate Jacob for, taking the win on this one. It's, from a free host here at Twilight at Night.
Well, 2 hosts and a guest.
Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much for listening to Twilight at Night. This has been Tom Collins, your host, and your other host.
Charlie Leeming.
And our esteemed guest.
I was part of the original bit.
Big thank you to our sponsor, Count Chocula.
And also thank you to Stephanie Myers again for
Thank you.
writing
Stephanie.
Twilight.
Thank you, Stephanie Myers.
Thank you.
That has been Twilight at Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.